Welcome to another episode live at Cannabis Europa from the beautiful Barbican in central London. I'm Shahbaaz Karafarani. I'm your host for the day and for these episodes. It's been quite the day, and I'm really excited to welcome a new friend and one of the smartest humans I've met recently in European cannabis, Luc Richner. How are you, my man?
I'm very well, thank you. It's great to be on the podcast here with you. It's great to be in London. Beautiful weather for a change in London, and beautiful people, great energy in the industry.
Beautiful energy.
I want to take myself being far away from the smartest guy in this industry, because otherwise the industry will have an issue, but I'll take that as a compliment.
I said one of the smartest guys, not the smartest guy.
I'll take that.
Well, Luc, you and I had a chance to meet a couple weeks ago, on LinkedIn. We had, a couple minutes to get to know each other. I think we were both impressed with each other's backgrounds and, what we both bring to the industry. And for those who might not know you and who are listening from either North America, Africa, wherever everyone's listening from, tell the people a little bit about who you are, what problems you're solving today in the industry.
With pleasure. I took a bit of a detour through a couple of other things in life. I started early with the industry without being in the industry. Let's just say, good times in college. Basically, I come from supply chain management, international trade, logistics, kind of freight forwarding background. Did that in the early days, then studied tourism. Moved to Bali, was there for 11 years, started furniture distribution, recycling, upcycling, basically always supply chain management from in or the outside of that specific or different specific industries. Had a restaurant, farm to table, 80 products, 80 farmers, 540 products. Tried to bring a software that kind of shares with my consumer that, look, this restaurant, we're doing everything right. Actually, all the produce in there is, organic and is done in a certain way.
No farm to table restaurants actually do that. Now that you mentioned that.
No, none of them. And I was like, well, I'm going through all this effort to make this happen. And the consumer is like, the consumer is always like, well, how can you prove this?
How do you know? Yeah,
how
exactly.
do you know? And I'm like, well, I can't be there every time and tell the story myself. So I tried to bring different softwares in, which is in the end, it's purchasing, then it's kind of manufacturing in the end, then it's point of sale. So the idea was also to trade some of those products. That was in Indonesia, mind you, 80 farmers and 17 islands, and it's a bit of a different supply chain. And looked at cannabis always from that angle or one step back first. Yeah, so basically no software really talked to each other. So that's already, and restaurant is one of the oldest industries in the world, if not the oldest industry in the world. At least the one we want to be in, where basically you had nothing that speaks to each other and allows the consumer to make a qualified decision of what they're purchasing based on really what goes into their food. It's always either a brand or it's this or it's that, but it was never really based on real-time data. The compliance aspect, which in cannabis is the compliance aspect, but in general, you just want to know what goes into a product. And that was the inspiration. 2019, 18, I looked at the cannabis industry for a long time. As I mentioned before, and the times when the US had the crazy numbers of Constellation brands, yada yada yada. You've been there for that.
I was eating and living that.
Yeah. I missed that. So I was always like, if this comes again, I want to be part of this. And I always said, if this comes to Asia, then I'm going to actively, go balls deep or head on or whatever you want to call it. And 2018, overnight, Thailand had medical.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is my time to get into this industry. And that's what I did. I tried to do supply chain management. I tried to do logistics. I tried to do all this, like helping people to access new markets. Shit show at the time specifically, all the declarations, everything with customs declarations, everything was done in just the most gray, outdated, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, I'm not here to smuggle drugs. I'm not here to do any of that. That's, for other people, I want to do this properly.
Not many drug smugglers will tell you that they're here to smuggle drugs, though, right? So
it's usually the best looking with the best.
That's true. I got stopped the other day in Newark Airport because I looked good. I didn't have a luggage though. I thought I was smuggling drugs. Turns out I wasn't.
Yeah. No, but so to wrap that up, I then realized that there is a big need for compliance in the industry, because that whole international trade aspect, how do you move products from one country to the other? The whole world has agreements on how this thing works when it comes to pharmaceutical products. So that was kind of what we went for. We're like, if we can build a system that does full traceability from A to Z, we basically create a digital twin, and then you log every single step that you do from seed to sale, really, and even after sale is what we're doing with the Swiss government. But now I'm going to wrap this up so we can open the discussion. But basically, the problem and the pain point that I wanted to solve was how can I build a system that allows the cannabis industry to internationally interact with each other based on international standards and so forth.
Small problem to solve.
Well, we're young ones. When I went to my dad, who's been doing, freight forwarding for all his life, and I was like, this is what I'm trying to do. And he's like, really? Like, you could do so many things and your life could be so easy, and that's the problem you want to tackle. And I was like, well, I was in Bali for 11 years. I had easy. I want to do something proper and big, and I don't want to say it's proper or big, but keeps me very, very busy, and a whole bunch of people around me that, as I mentioned before, I'm not the smartest in that room, keeps them busy too.
Wow. So supply chain management, traceability of cannabis through different countries, especially with regulatory constraints, and import export is obviously very challenging across continents, let alone the EU. So let's talk a little bit about you're headquartered out of Switzerland.
Yes.
What do you do with the Swiss government right now?
What don't we do with the Swiss government? No, jokes aside. So basically, story before, then we started 2019. 20 with the Swiss Industry Association also, where we're like, okay, Switzerland had a CBD boom. Yeah. So we were part of the association. Shout out to Elias, who's my co-founder, who's now the president of the association. But we always supported them.
Shout out Elias, let's go.
Shout out to Elias, yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go. And we came from like, how can the industry regulate itself to come forward to the health minister or to the regulator and say, look, we got this. We know how to control this. Because otherwise you allow the regulator to start to then make their rules the way they want. But if you proactively approach them and say, this is pharmaceutical grade, this is this grade, which standards do you want? You kind of take a lot of headache away, and you can be proactive. So that's what we did. As industry association, as a company that brings them together, we approached the regulator and said, look, this is how we would do it. What would you want us to do? And then fun part started. Well, no, actually that was the fun part. Then the work started. So
I like that though. The fact that you didn't just come with a problem and say, hey, let's solve this. You came with a problem, a solution set, and then let them choose which one was in the solution set.
The world has enough problems, right? You got to come with a solution. Otherwise, you just make everybody's life even harder. So what happened then was there was a phase of consultation with the health ministry. Then there was a public tender. We won that public tender. And now we have a 10-year contract with the health ministry for the entire cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, basically the entire supply chain until point of sale and purchasing per pure THC, which is a different story we can go into, for the pilot projects for recreational cannabis. So that was the first government contract, it was the first country to go in that direction. It's not true. Holland wanted to do it first, but Holland took 7 years to start. We came a bit later, but we started before. So that's what we do now. We do the cultivators, we do the manufacturers. We have, 80-something point of sales that are live right now, where you have social clubs, you have pharmacies, you have actual dispensaries, and you have those drug distribution centers that are state-owned, and they're testing all the different mechanisms of distribution to the market, and that's what's happening in Switzerland right now, and that's our government contract, and it's as exciting as it gets, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you said that facetiously, but that's exciting. That's exciting. The amount of data that you have at your disposal, the amount of so much of the battle is working with the regulator, and the fact that you are collaborating with the regulator and can innovate based on what you're learning together is monumental. It's a huge step, right? So when you told me that initially, I was equally as blown away then as I am now, which is fantastic. So where is Switzerland in terms of a market going to be 2 years from now?
I know something you should know. No.
We'll strike this from the record.
No, on the record. In Switzerland, we have a thing called a motion, which is the people voted for something that is legalization. Now the government has to work on a paper, which is happening right now. It's being worked on right now. So there is a chance that Switzerland opens up even more.
Interesting.
So let's say worst case scenario is we will have way more pilot projects, and it will just be more people having access to regulated, quality controlled regulated is always a word that people kind of are afraid of, but what happened in Europe was there was such a major boom of CBD that then created just overflowing in the market of CBD sprayed with synthetic cannabinoids. Was a big issue, still is a very big issue at the moment. So regulated in this sense really means consumer protection, means harm reduction, kids and so forth not really being at the forefront of it. But where Switzerland, to come back to your point, where Switzerland stands in 2 years is Switzerland is on a trajectory to open this up, either completely or slowly, but that is where the people have voted for that, right? Now, the reason why we can't in Europe do what the US has done in some states or what Canada has done, because we all adhere to the UN Single Convention, so we all adhere to international standards. It doesn't allow a country to just legalize fully. So either you do it on a research basis, which is what Germany's doing now with this Pillar 2, which is what Holland is doing, what Switzerland is doing, many other countries, or you have medical. And Switzerland is already as far pushed the boundaries as far as you could for recreational access under the UN Single Convention, and without pushing those boundaries further before the UN deschedules, there is an opportunity of maybe just turning that into a nationwide study. So nothing says studies can't be nationwide.
Yeah.
It just says your country has to have it under control. Yeah.
Wow.
Got lost there, but that happens.
No, I mean it's truly fascinating though, and so as you know, Germany's obviously done what they've done, and Switzerland feels like it's on the cusp of similar trajectory, with obviously Cannavigia leading the way. Outside of Germany, and obviously you have a stranglehold in Switzerland, and it feels like that market's progressive right now, especially with progressive measures that you're taking, and the use of technology and how you're facilitating that is a huge part of that, right? I haven't really heard of many other governments and private sector companies working hand in hand like that in the same way. Outside of Germany, outside of Switzerland, what other countries are you bullish on in the EU today?
In the EU?
Yeah.
All right. In the EU, Czech Republic is a big one. Czech Republic is very forward-looking. You have Jindřich Svobodil, who's the drug coordinator. I hope he heard this because I hope I actually didn't butcher his name for once.
Sounded right.
No, but jokes aside, they're pushing forward. They want to be first movers. So Czech Republic is a very interesting one, to be a country to be focused on. Poland is kind of the sleeping giant right now. In some ways, you have. Well, nobody knows what Portugal does. It will not do what we were hoping for a while.
Yeah. Why is that? Why has Portugal felt like it's stalled out a little bit? Politics.
If you don't, cannabis is always a touchy subject.
Extremely.
And either you can popularize and polarize it like Germany did with the coalition that was like cannabis was their big thing to push through. Mm-hmm. It was their thing also to kind of unite.
Yeah.
If you don't have that movement of consolidation of opinions or people that want to really drive it forward, it's hard to get the majority in a country to expose themselves to be the ones that saying, look, we want to do this under da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. Because, and now outside of Europe, let's look at Thailand. And this is where, and their industry.
My next question.
Industry, they're my friends, and I'm part of this industry. But I shout out to all my friends out there that I know exactly who you are, that open things up nicely, and then they try to think they can go back to the old ways, which in the end just leaves a big issue for the potential of actual legal industry.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see that often, and this is why some countries have still this stigma with cannabis. Like if we let them go, what happens then? And unfortunately, in the past, it wasn't just always fun and games how it ended when the industry was let run.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Thailand because obviously your ties to Asia and things like that. And Thailand was the place that was opening up with seemed like it was regulated but unregulated completely, and now it's being peeled back. So, in your opinion, are there still investment opportunities in Thailand based on what you understand and see of the regulatory framework that's essentially being, I guess, rewritten or
No,
Or-
they're actually exactly the same. They were. They were just. I mean, it's going to be scheduled up again a little bit, so they have a basis to actually enforce certain laws because it was a lawless situation. There are great opportunities in Thailand. I would even say there are more opportunities now than before because if I'm an investor, I look at something and say, okay, how clear in a nascent industry that is on the fringes of also legal frameworks. Do I 100% know that this business model is within the law?
Yeah.
Right? And none of these business models before were in the law. Within, I mean, they were and they weren't, and it was this gray. But I'm in
No
compliance.
checks and balances, though.
There
Exactly.
is, but there is no gray in compliance.
Yeah.
It's black or white.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people actually ask me this question. So where would you kind of because I don't have gray. I have one or the other. But so what happens now in Thailand is consolidation. A lot of people will just be pushed out or gone because they actually never had a legitimate a seat on
Claim
the table,
to it,
claim
yeah.
to it, and they're just cowboys that went there and opened shops and did whatever they wanted. But actually now there's great groups like the Octera groups that have built the dispensary association that are grouping together dispensaries to kind of also show that they have their own how do you say that like have an industry voice, a combined industry voice, and saying, look, we will work under the Thai traditional medicine framework, which is always the one that was legal. Everything else was just decriminalized and not prosecuted, which the Thai government, in my opinion, did so they can understand where the loopholes are, and now they just plugged them all.
Yeah.
And there's great opportunities in actually bringing the companies that are wildly out there. Headless chickens because they're all panicked. Not all, like there's a lot of them, as I mentioned, the one before, and a couple of others that are very well structured and organized. But there is an opportunity to help the ones that are not well organized to organize them within those structures, and then you have a sustainable business model based on actual predictability and so forth. And that.
Call me jaded. I'd say maybe to that. I'd say sustainable business model based on.
Well, sustainable business model is still cannabis. It's still cannabis. Sorry. Legally, from a legal perspective,
yes,
you have an opportunity there. And don't forget, from Bangkok, you're within 4 hours, you have 2.4 billion people.
Yeah.
Within 4-hour flight. And
Sheer
none of them
density.
have access to cannabis.
Yeah.
And the medical framework under the traditional Thai medicine allows anyone to consume any of these active substances that are under traditional Thai medicine.
Wow.
So tourism will not go away.
No.
I mean, the U.S., you're from the U.S. Well, how did it start?
Medicinal. It started illicit, first and foremost.
Yeah. No, that wasn't there.
Yeah.
It started medicinal.
Medicinal, yeah, exactly. No, it was definitely there. I mean, I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was selling weed in university to pay for university, right? So, but we talked a little bit about that illicit market, and then going to the medicinal market and recreational. And one of the things I'm truly trying to understand in Europe is, it's like there's this line of being straddled between medicinal and recreational, right? And it's going to be curious to see how that shakes out a little bit. But I think the technology you're building and what you're doing is so important, and I'm excited to continue the conversation, man. I feel like you and I could talk forever on this, and we'll continue to talk forever on this. Before I let you go, what's one big bold prediction you have for the cannabis industry?
So what I really like about the momentum right now in the industry in Europe at the moment is whenever we have this kind of like big eureka, or whatever you want to call it, moment, like Germany just announced, descheduled, that allows for a lot of drive. It allows for new capital. It allows also for a lot of companies that have been, we've all been bleeding. We've all been bleeding for a while.
Big
now
time.
there is business coming back in. Like businesses are recovering, right? And there is this holy grail of break even for many of them, somewhere at least somewhat realistically graspable. So Germany really triggered something for the industry itself, but also from a regulatory standpoint, Germans are known to be the toughest regulators.
Yeah.
Regulators in the world.
Yeah.
no, everything is always over thought through, and they opened up.
Yeah.
So that leaves huge room for actual, not just hope,
Yeah.
It actually leaves room for a real industry to grow out of it.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one looks at Canada more because they're tough regulators too. Health Canada, and it's interesting. It's interesting to me that Canada isn't even in the conversation a lot of the time because I mean that's really one of the first places that legalized and was able to create this framework, and there's progress there. But it's just interesting to me because I would consider German and Canadian regulators very similar in terms of like that at least that public health mentality kind of thing. So curious to me.
It's on a regulatory level. It's called the Quebec model.
That's right. That's what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want that.
No, of course not.
So all right, so keep that out of the company.
No, of course not. Of course not.
But it's always with. I mean, I spoke with a lot of regulators, and it's always there. Is it the Quebec model? Is it this or is it that?
Yeah.
And in the end, Canada does not report to the UN. The US does not report to the UN.
Yeah.
So those models are not international viable.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, lots of food for thought for our listeners, for our viewers. We'll get back in touch on this. We're gonna be doing a couple episodes, you and I, as the podcast. It was
a good round one.
Yeah, it was good. Good round one. Lots of good nuggets. Appreciate you, Luc. And we'll talk soon, my brother.